Before this video starts, I want to say one thing. This is not theory, this is something I noticed in my own life.
Most people believe they are living their own lives, that their choices are personal, their goals are self-chosen, and their direction is the result of individual decisions. It feels natural to think this way. But if you slow down and look more carefully, a quieter question begins to appear. Who decided what a good life should look like for you? Who defined what is reasonable, acceptable, or realistic? Why do some paths feel obvious and safe while others feel uncomfortable or not for you, even before you seriously consider them? Why do certain desires come with guilt, doubt, or the need to explain yourself? Very often, these reactions have little to do with reality itself. They come from expectations that were placed on you long before you had the chance to question them. Expectations don't usually arrive as pressure. They arrive as guidance, as concern, as subtle signals of approval and disappointment. Over time, you learn what is encouraged and what quietly makes others uncomfortable. And without realizing it, you begin to adjust. You don't consciously decide to live someone else's version of life. You simply move in the direction that feels safest, most acceptable, most familiar. The direction that brings the least resistance. Eventually, this direction starts to feel like your own choice. The expectations fade from view, but their influence remains. They shape what you aim for, what you avoid, and what you believe is possible for you. This is not about blame. It is about awareness, because once you begin to notice how much of your reality was shaped by expectations that were never questioned, something important changes. You stop assuming that the life you are living is the only one you could have chosen. And that awareness is where the conversation truly begins. Other people's expectations rarely enter your life as clear demands. They don't arrive with force or authority. Most of the time, they come quietly, disguised as care. We just want what's best for you. This would be more stable. Think about your future. These words don't feel like pressure. They feel like guidance. And because they come from people whose opinions matter to us, we listen. From a young age, you learn to read reactions. A smile when you do what's expected. A pause when you don't. Approval when you stay within familiar boundaries. Concern when you step outside them. Nothing has to be said directly. The message is still clear. Over time, these signals turn into internal reference points. You begin to anticipate reactions before they happen. You adjust your choices not because anyone is forcing you, but because you already know what will be welcomed and what will not. This is how expectations move inside. They stop being external opinions and start becoming inner guidelines. You tell yourself what is reasonable, what is too risky, what is not for someone like you. And once this shift happens, the pressure disappears. Not because it's gone, but because it no longer needs to come from outside. You've learned to carry it yourself. The most powerful expectations are not the ones placed on you openly. They are the ones you learned so well that you began to enforce them on your own. Recognizing this is not about rejecting advice or dismissing care. It's about seeing the difference between support and direction, between guidance and limitation. Because when expectations quietly become your own rules, they stop being visible, and only awareness can bring them back into view. Childhood is where expectations take their deepest root. Not because children understand them clearly, but because they depend on approval to feel safe. In those early years, being accepted is not just emotional comfort, it is survival. And so the mind learns quickly what is rewarded and what creates tension. You are praised for being convenient, for being reasonable, for meeting expectations. And even when no one speaks directly, you sense when disappointment enters the room. Don't cause problems. Be grateful. Be realistic. Don't disappoint us. At the time, these messages may not feel limiting. They feel like instructions for belonging. And belonging matters more than authenticity when you are young, so you adapt. You learn to adjust your desires, to lower certain impulses, to shape yourself into someone who fits the environment around you. And because this adaptation happens early, it becomes invisible. As you grow older, the voices change, but the pattern remains. The need to meet expectations quietly follows you into adult life. It shows up in career choices, relationships, and the version of success you aim for. You may no longer remember who first expressed these expectations, but you still feel them. They appear as inner pressure, as hesitation, as a sense of obligation that seems to come from nowhere. And because this pressure feels familiar, it feels like truth. Understanding this does not mean blaming your past or rejecting your upbringing. It means recognizing that the reality you learned to live in was shaped for safety, not necessarily for fulfillment. And once you see that, you gain the freedom to ask a question you were never taught to ask as a child. What do I actually want when no one is watching? As you grow older, expectations no longer come only from family or close relationships. They begin to arrive from society itself. Society doesn't tell you what to do directly. It creates a template, a quiet agreement about what a normal life should look like. When you should achieve certain milestones, what kind of success is respectable, what choices are considered responsible. These standards are rarely questioned because they are shared. When everyone around you seems to be moving in the same direction, it feels natural to follow, not because it is right for you, but because it feels safe. The moment you consider stepping outside this script, discomfort appears, doubt, anxiety, a sense of being out of sync, not because something is wrong, but because you are leaving familiar expectations behind. Society reinforces this script subtly, through approval, visibility, and validation, and through silence or concern when you choose differently. You don't need to be told that you're wrong. The absence of reassurance is enough. Over time, these signals shape your internal compass. You begin to evaluate your progress based on external timelines and standards. You measure yourself not by what feels meaningful, but by what looks acceptable. And slowly, the question, "Is this right for me?" is replaced with, "Is this normal?" This is how societal expectations become personal reality. Not through force, but through repetition. Not through rules, but through shared assumptions. Becoming aware of this does not require rejecting society or isolating yourself from it. It simply requires noticing when your choices are guided by alignment with others rather than connection with yourself. Because the moment you see the script, you are no longer fully inside it. And that awareness creates the possibility of choosing differently. The most subtle shift happens when expectations no longer feel external at all, when they stop sounding like other people's opinions and begin to feel like your own inner voice. At this point, no one needs to pressure you. No one needs to remind you of what is expected. You already know. You already filter your choices before they fully form. You begin to tell yourself what is reasonable, what is too risky, what is not realistic for someone like me. These thoughts feel responsible, mature, grounded, but often they are expectations that have been internalized so deeply that they now operate as rules. This is where expectations become self-limitation. You may believe you are being careful, when in reality, you are staying within invisible boundaries that were never consciously chosen. You may think you are being practical, while quietly avoiding paths that don't match the version of life you were taught to respect. What makes this stage so powerful is that it feels voluntary. It feels like freedom. After all, no one is stopping you. And yet, you stop yourself. Opportunities are dismissed before they are explored. Desires are edited before they are expressed. Questions are answered before they are fully asked. And because this process happens internally, it rarely creates conflict. There is no argument, no rebellion, just a gradual narrowing of possibility. Awareness begins when you notice how often your inner dialogue sounds like judgment rather than curiosity. How often it closes doors instead of opening questions. Because the moment you see that a limitation is learned rather than inherent, it begins to loosen. And what once felt like a fact starts to reveal itself as a habit of thought. At some point, a quiet tension begins to appear. Nothing may look wrong from the outside. Your life might seem stable, reasonable, even successful by common standards. And yet, something feels off. There is a sense of heaviness, a subtle fatigue, a feeling that you are constantly maintaining a version of yourself rather than living freely as one. This is the moment when two forces begin to meet, the person you learn to be and the person you are slowly becoming. The conflict is rarely dramatic. It doesn't announce itself clearly. Instead, it shows up as irritation without a clear cause, as boredom with goals you once thought you wanted, as resistance toward paths that once felt right. You may begin to question yourself. Why am I dissatisfied? Why does this feel empty? And often, the mind responds by trying harder to meet expectations, not realizing that the expectations themselves are part of the tension. This is a critical moment, because the discomfort you feel is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of misalignment, a signal that the life you are living may be built more around fulfilling expectations than expressing your own values. For many people, this is where the conflict is avoided. They distract themselves, they rationalize, they tell themselves they should be grateful and move on. But for those who pause and listen, this tension becomes informative. It marks the point where awareness begins to deepen, where the question quietly shifts from "how do I do this better" to "is this actually mine?" And once that question appears, it cannot be unseen. Learning to distinguish your own desires from borrowed expectations is not easy because they often sound similar at first. Both can feel important, both can feel urgent, but their emotional tone is different. Borrowed expectations usually come with pressure, with a sense of should. They ask for justification, they demand results. They carry the fear of disappointing someone, even if you're not sure who that someone is anymore. Your own desires are quieter. They don't argue. They don't need approval. They don't promise status or recognition. Often, they simply persist in the background, returning again and again when the noise settles. Another difference is how they affect your energy. Expectations tend to drain it. Even when you succeed, the satisfaction feels brief. The goal moves, the standard changes, and the effort never quite ends. Your own desires, even when challenging, tend to create a sense of aliveness. There is effort, but there is also meaning. Movement feels intentional rather than obligatory. Pay attention to what happens when no one is watching, when there is no audience, no comparison, no reward. What still matters to you then? What thoughts return when you are calm, not pressured? This is not about finding a perfect answer. It is about noticing patterns, about listening without immediately correcting yourself. Because the more you learn to recognize the difference between "I want" and "I'm expected to want," the easier it becomes to step out of inherited paths and toward something that feels genuinely yours. And that recognition is a quiet form of freedom. Returning authorship over your life does not begin with rebellion. It does not require dramatic decisions, confrontations, or breaking away from everything you know. In fact, it usually begins very quietly. It begins with a question you allow yourself to ask without needing an immediate answer. What do I actually want? For many people, this question feels unfamiliar. Not because they don't care, but because they were never encouraged to listen for the answer. Their attention was trained outward, toward expectations, standards, and approval. So at first, there may be silence, and that silence is not a problem. It is part of the process. Returning to yourself is not about replacing one script with another. It is about slowing down enough to notice when you are acting out of obligation rather than intention. When a choice feels heavy not because it is difficult, but because it is not aligned. Small moments matter here. Choosing differently in minor ways, allowing yourself to pause instead of automatically agreeing. Noticing when your body relaxes and when it tightens. These moments don't change your life overnight, but they begin to shift the relationship you have with it. Instead of asking, "What should I do next?" you begin to ask, "What feels honest right now?" And honesty, even in small doses, has a way of reconnecting you with direction. This is how authorship returns, not through force, but through attention, not by rejecting the past, but by gently reclaiming the present. And over time, these small, quiet adjustments begin to create a life that feels less like a performance and more like participation. You did not choose the first expectations that shaped your life. You did not decide which standards would feel normal, which paths would feel acceptable, and which desires would feel unrealistic. Those expectations were absorbed before you had the awareness to question them. But awareness changes the relationship. When you begin to see how much of your reality was built around meeting expectations rather than expressing yourself, something important shifts. You are no longer only reacting, you are noticing. And noticing creates space. You don't need to reject everyone's expectations. You don't need to erase your past or undo your life. What matters is recognizing that not every expectation deserves to become your reality. Some expectations were useful ones. They helped you belong. They helped you feel safe. But safety is not the same as fulfillment. The moment you ask, "Whose life is this really?" you step out of automatic living. You begin to choose more consciously, even if those choices are small and uncertain at first. Freedom does not arrive as a single decision. It unfolds gradually through attention, honesty, and patience. And perhaps that is the most important realization of all. Not every life you are living was fully chosen by you, but you can begin choosing it now.